Hello to all of you watching Rwanda Television. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this latest edition of the news. My name is Serge Nhore. Now, as we begin the edition, let us first inform you that Prime Minister Justin Nsengiyumva today received Ms. Amy Pope, the Director General of the International Organization for Migration, for discussions on Rwanda IOM or cooperation and continued partnership in support of Rwanda's development priorities. Now, migration has remained one of the most pressing issues globally, presenting not just challenges but opportunities as well, provided the matter is handled appropriately. Earlier, I had the opportunity to speak to Amy Pope, the Director General of the International Organization for Migration, and posed a number of questions on the subject. Take a look. Rwanda is increasingly recognized as a leader in migration governance and regional integration. What lessons from Rwanda's experience could benefit other countries across Africa?
Rwanda brings a very welcoming approach to the issue of migration, recognizing that people have moved for centuries and that the best way to approach the issue is one where you enable people to find access to jobs, access to housing, to better integrate into communities, to have proper identification so that they are not working or living in the shadows. That's a best practice that all countries should consider.
Now, youth employment remains a priority across the continent. How can labor mobility and skills partnerships help create opportunities for young Africans while supporting economic growth?
The demographic shifts around the world are profoundly affecting job opportunities. Right now, across many parts of the world, in North America, for example, in Europe, in the Gulf states, in parts of Asia, there simply are not enough young people who can take the jobs that are available. And so many of those countries are looking for people who have ambition, who want opportunity, and to enable them to come and work in their countries. Now, that's good news for much of Africa, because in Africa, we have a wide group of young people, many of whom don't have the opportunities here that they may have elsewhere. So going abroad, getting the skills, learning new languages, building the resources they need, including financial resources, and bringing those back into the countries where people are from actually will help enable development.
Okay, Rwanda has one of Africa's most engaged diasporas. What role can diaspora communities play in driving investment, innovation, and development back home?
I've seen some really good examples of it here already in Rwanda, including, for example, a young man I met yesterday who is building a device to measure the emissions from vehicles and to track when those vehicles are emitting more than what are permissible emissions. Now, that young man, a couple years ago, he was a student here in Rwanda. Through diaspora mentoring, he has received the kind of advice he needs to build this into a business. Today, he's hired people, he's expanding his business. He's now expanded the concept to have farming equipment that can ship from the farm directly into communities, things that were not really attainable before. And it's that diaspora engagement that's helped him to achieve those goals.
Now, on a broader perspective, as the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area advances, what role does human mobility play in unlocking the continent's economic potential?
It's incredibly important for people to be able to move where the opportunities are. That requires some level of free movement. That doesn't mean that there's no controls, no management of that movement. And so governments like Rwanda are taking very seriously how to manage their borders, establishing one-stop border posts, for example, that help facilitate trade, but also help address any kinds of threats that they may be worried about. So thinking about it comprehensively, what are the ways we can enable the movement of people, the movement of goods, but also manage the risks that countries may perceive?
The reality is that migration is often discussed in terms of just challenges. So where are some of the opportunities that well-managed migration can create for countries like Rwanda?
Well, the evidence shows us overwhelmingly that migration, when it's well managed, actually leads to greater economic prosperity for the country the migrant comes from and the country the migrant goes to. So what Rwanda is doing at this moment, first and foremost, to invite investment into its country where young people then can get the skills and the experiences that they need, is one good way. Another, though, is to look for opportunities for young people to go abroad, to live, to work, and then to bring back their funds and their resources into the country. Now, this is the way we can exchange new ideas, new innovations, and actually advance economies in both countries. So there's a lot that can happen when you manage migration and you have people able to travel in a safe and regular channel. When people are traveling through smuggling networks, that's where the exploitation and abuse happens. So thinking about countering smuggling and trafficking by enabling safe and regular pathways for movements is a winning strategy.
Now, looking ahead, what trends do you see shaping migration in Africa over the next decade, and how should governments prepare?
Well, there are two different trends, and they're going to be on different sides of the spectrum. The first are the trends that we're seeing that are causing people to move, and increasingly the impact of a changing climate, drought, floods, land degradation, sea level rise. Those are increasingly causing people to move, and more people are moving today as a result of those kinds of pressures than any other pressure. Likewise, the impact of conflict. When there's no peace, people move in search of safety, in search of protection. So that's on the push side. On the other side are the opportunities that exist. The fact that we have so many young people here in this continent, the fact that there are not enough young people in other parts of the world. So that will create a competition for talent. And young Rwandans who have the skills they need, they'll be very competitive in that labor market competition.
Well, speaking of conflict, Rwanda has welcomed refugees and asylum seekers from the region for many years now. What role can countries such as Rwanda play in shaping more sustainable approaches to refugee protection and addressing regional displacement?
It's important to look at the issue of migration regionally, not just country by country, because by its nature, migration means people are moving across borders from one country to the next. So bringing a regional approach to issues like protection, to issues like access to education, access to the job market, integration into communities, that's critical. And what I've seen here in Rwanda that is so promising is many, many different parts of the government looking at this issue from every different angle. So I've met with the Minister of Trade, I've met with the Minister of Labor, I've met with the Minister of Home Affairs. Every single one is looking at a dimension on the issue of the movement of people to come up with this comprehensive strategy. Now that's the right way to do it. It's not something we see in every part of the world. It's something that we'd recommend to other countries.
Now, maybe expanding on that, we know that many young Africans see migration as a pathway to better economic opportunities. How can governments and international organizations expand safe and regular pathways for young people while reducing the risks associated with irregular migration, of course, touching on the whole business of smuggling and so on?
So one way is, again, to look at the whole route that people are now traveling and to understand from the evidence, from the data, why is someone moving in the first instance? What happens when they're moving along that journey, and where are they going? Once you understand those dynamics and then you can take them apart, you can address each part of it to better protect people and better offer them opportunities. Now, one thing we see that's very, very worrisome is a number of East Africans have been recruited to work in scam centers in parts of Asia, Myanmar, Cambodia, for example. And those young people think they're going for a real job. When they get there, though, they're being exploited, they're being abused, their passports are taken, they're not doing the work they thought they would do. Now, we advise all young people, when you see these job opportunities, make sure that there are proper visas that are being offered, make sure there are proper protections. Don't just jump on every opportunity as it opens up. So the more that governments, for example, Rwanda, can partner with other governments to establish these safe mobility channels, to ensure that recruitment agencies are registering, and to hold them accountable, to make sure that young people, especially when they go abroad, are not being exploited, are being paid what they said they were going to be paid. That's the way we can make sure that this will work.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers before we conclude this interview?
Well, the world is changing rapidly, and the countries that are going to get ahead the fastest are those who recognize that change, who build systems, to take advantage of those changes, who recognize that migration is part of human development. That's what we see here in Rwanda. That's the exciting thing about working with the government of Rwanda. And countries all around the world should be taking a look at what Rwanda is doing, because we believe this will help advance the economy faster.
Amy Pope, Director General of the International Organization for Migration, thank you for taking the time to speak to Rwanda Television.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The Rwanda Meteorology Agency is warning the general public to take measures to mitigate the effects of the heavy rains expected during the September-November wet season. The agency says the rains will be particularly heavy in the western, southern, and northern provinces. On a positive note, the Director General of Meteo Rwanda, that's Aimable Gahigi, has noted that farmers have time to prepare their land for cultivation, while everyone should know when to start planting based on the weather forecast. However, meteorology experts say the rains will be accompanied by strong winds, frequent lightning, hailstorms, and floods that could trigger landslides. The ministry in charge of emergency management is therefore warning everyone to take the necessary precautions. Now, officials from various institutions and agencies in Guinea are in Rwanda for discussions aimed at sharing knowledge and expertise across different sectors. The delegation from Guinea will spend nearly 2 weeks in Rwanda and has been tasked with gaining knowledge on the use of technology in various services, particularly in public procurement. This is part of the cooperation and friendly relations between Guinea and Rwanda.
We are currently hosting them as an exchange program that we already have. It's also already based on the leadership between the two countries that established a good relationship between our two sister countries. But in particular for Rwanda Cooperation, we already have a project that is ongoing in Guinea-Conakry that is focusing on supporting reforms in our procurement. It is also built on the last mission that we had in Conakry with a delegation of colleagues from sister institutions here, where we are pursuing other opportunities in the interest of, again, continuing our good cooperation in knowledge exchange. We are looking at currently at the procurement project, which is ending at the end of this year, and they are here particularly to get an experience of Rwanda's journey into implementation of the procurement system. But we are also looking at giving them a chance to be exposed on other solutions. Here we're talking about Irembo, where they had a chance to interact with colleagues at Irembo, but we also had a chance for them to look at other systems like the Office of the Prime Minister had an exposure and some good understanding on the e-cabinet system. We also have been sharing with them on our e-health system, which they also wanted to look at, the intelligence center, which is one of our really robust health system. So really it is in the spirit of continuing to share knowledge between the two countries, two-way knowledge, where they have information, we have information and experience, and so we expose them to this. So it's something that we've always been doing as Rwanda Cooperation, and it is a spirit that we hope will continue even on other countries. What is clear, based on the numbers that we're even seeing, there is willingness for African countries to turn to other African countries in seeking of different experiences. That's one. Two, there is also an understanding that Africa has built its own capabilities, and so we are able to exchange those capabilities country to country, and we want to really make sure that that is the shift that we go to. Three, what we are also seeing is that we are moving to practical implementation. So currently, if we have projects in 5 countries where we are executing different projects in different areas, what it means to us, it means that there is a good knowledge exchange that is happening, not only in exposure and study visits, but also in projects execution. And what that will mean, it will mean that we will be maturing into country-to-country programs, long-term programs, where we can also host some of this knowledge here, but also share them across the continent. So it's really a good timing and a good shift in mindset, but we really want to keep it going based on the current realities that we see.
Now, last year, President Paul Kagame attended the 7th Transform Africa Summit, which focused on technological development in Africa and was held in Guinea. During the summit, the president pointed out that there are opportunities to invest in technology and use internet connectivity to accelerate the development of the African continent. He stressed that no one should fear technology and that cooperation among countries would be key to achieving this. As always, it's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you again soon. Until then, it's goodbye.